Dear South Africans, why are we gradually destroying our country? What started like a joke has turned into a hydra-headed challenge that South Africa is fighting on a daily basis. Illegal immigration has gradually tarnished the image of the country's border management. Sadly, even some of our own security personnel are now receiving bribes and paving the way for illegal foreigners, especially from Zimbabwe, to enter the country. What has just happened has exposed the rot that has been secretly ongoing in the border management sector. The bigwigs involved in facilitating illegal immigration, as well as the jobs illegal foreigners are doing, have been exposed. Should President Cyril Ramaphosa be held responsible for this? Are illegal foreigners the ones working for corrupt politicians in the country? At the center of this development is the Border Management Authority, an institution established precisely to bring order, coordination, and accountability to South Africa's borders. This morning's operation near the Beitbridge border post was not routine patrol work. It was a targeted, intensified ground operation led by the Commissioner of the BMA and the Beitbridge Port of Entry Port Commander, Intakusani Limbani, aimed at irregular crossings that have become synonymous with systemic weaknesses along the South Africa-Zimbabwe border. It doesn't end here. What two South Africans did for the illegal Zimbabweans left people in awe. The facts, as confirmed by authorities, are clear. 25 undocumented Zimbabwean nationals were apprehended while attempting to enter South Africa illegally through dense bush areas outside the official port of entry. Alongside them, 2 South African facilitators were also arrested. This detail is critical. The presence of local facilitators underscores a reality that many South Africans have suspected but often struggled to see formally acknowledged. Illegal immigration at scale does not occur without internal collaboration. This operation was made possible through the deployment of advanced surveillance technology, including drones and real-time monitoring systems. These tools allowed BMA officers to detect movement in areas that have historically been difficult, if not impossible, to patrol effectively. The arrests did not happen by chance. They were the result of a deliberate shift towards technology-driven border enforcement designed to close gaps that smugglers, facilitators, and corrupt networks have exploited for years. The timing of the operation is also telling. The festive season return period places enormous strain on border infrastructure, with high volumes of travelers moving in and out of the country. It is during these periods of congestion that illegal crossings often increase, hidden within the noise of legitimate movement. In the opening days of January alone, the BMA has confirmed that hundreds of undocumented individuals have been intercepted at various ports of entry and along border segments, processed in accordance with immigration laws, and subjected to deportation procedures. What emerges from this is not just a law enforcement success story, but a broader narrative about institutional response. Commissioner Limbani has pointed to the effectiveness of the newly deployed technology in detecting and responding to unlawful crossings. Combined operations involving the South African Police Service and the South African National Defense Force signal an attempt at a coordinated multi-agency approach, something that has historically been lacking in border management. However, the deeper question remains, why has it taken this long, and why does each successful interception still feel like an exception rather than the norm? For years, communities near border areas have spoken of well-known routes, familiar facilitators, and predictable patterns of movement. This has fueled public suspicion that illegal immigration is not simply a failure of capacity, but a failure of accountability. The arrest of 2 South African facilitators in this operation adds weight to those concerns. Illegal border crossings are rarely spontaneous acts. They are organized, financed, and guided. When local actors are involved, it raises uncomfortable questions about who else may be benefiting, who may be turning a blind eye, and how deeply entrenched these networks really are. This is where the issue moves beyond immigration and into governance. Border management is not only about stopping illegal entry, it is about safeguarding economic stability, social cohesion, and national security. When borders are porous, the consequences ripple outward into the labor market, public services, housing, healthcare, and community relations. The strain felt in townships and informal settlements is often where the national failure becomes most visible. The public frustration that surrounds illegal immigration is frequently misdirected at migrants themselves, rather than at the systems that allow unlawful entry and exploitation to continue. This operation exposes that dynamic. The undocumented individuals apprehended will be processed under immigration law, but the larger moral and political responsibility lies with those who facilitate, profit from, or enable illegal entry, particularly when they are citizens or officials entrusted with protecting the border. This inevitably brings the discussion to political accountability. Should President Cyril Ramaphosa be held responsible? In constitutional terms, border management falls within the mandate of the executive, and by extension, the president bears ultimate responsibility for the performance of state institutions. However, responsibility does not automatically translate into direct culpability. The more pressing issue is whether the systems under his administration have been allowed to decay, whether corruption has been adequately confronted, and whether political will has consistently matched public rhetoric. Illegal immigration is not an isolated policy failure. It intersects with unemployment, crime perception, and political trust. When South Africans see undocumented foreigners working in sectors where locals struggle to find jobs, the anger is real, even if often misdirected. When they hear repeated promises of reform without sustained visible outcomes, cynicism grows. Each successful operation, like the one at Beitbridge, therefore carries both reassurance and indictment, proof that enforcement is possible, and evidence that it has not been consistent enough. Looking ahead, the immediate outcome is clear. The 25 undocumented individuals and the 2 facilitators will face legal processes as prescribed by immigration law. Deportations will follow. Operationally, the BMA will likely continue intensified patrols during peak travel periods, leveraging technology and interagency cooperation. But the longer-term implications are more complex. Technology can detect movement, but it cannot dismantle corruption on its own. Arrests can disrupt routes, but they do not automatically dismantle networks. For that, sustained investigations, internal accountability mechanisms, and political backing are required. The public will be watching closely to see whether facilitators face meaningful consequences or whether cases quietly disappear into the system. There is also the question of sustainability. Drones and surveillance systems require funding, maintenance, and skilled operators. A strategy that relies on bursts of enforcement during peak periods risks reverting to old vulnerabilities once attention shifts elsewhere. True border reform demands consistency, transparency, and measurable outcomes that extend beyond press statements. The unresolved questions remain pressing. How many facilitators remain undetected? How many officials, if any, are complicit? And will political leadership move beyond reactive enforcement towards structural reform? Until those questions are answered, each operation, no matter how successful, will feel like a temporary victory in a much larger battle. South Africa's borders are more than physical lines on a map. They are a test of governance, integrity, and national resolve. What unfolds next will determine whether this moment marks a turning point or simply another chapter in a crisis that the country can no longer afford to ignore.